The New Orleans Saints must be more explosive if they want to get a win against the New York Giants. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, your friend, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a Saints beat writer over at LouisianaSports.net. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, this is a very, very important game, not just for the Saints, but for their starting quarterback, Spencer Rattler. The Saints offensive line is sure to be tested while being banged up against a very talented New York Giants defensive line. And if the New Orleans Saints want to get a win, they'll have to do so while being a more explosive team. But the gap between explosive and not explosive is a lot slimmer than you might think. We got all that coming up for you on today's episode. We appreciate you very much. If it's your first time or your next time being here with us this time, making us your first listen and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Mazda. Just like your favorite players, Mazda sweats every detail because they make every move count. And when you do, pulling off the unexpected becomes just the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. The New Orleans Saints need to be a more explosive team up against the New York Giants if they want to get a win, their first win of the season. And the margin between what is explosive and where the Saints are now, which is not explosive, is not as steep or wide as you might think. I want to take a look at a couple of numbers, and these numbers are from the first 4 weeks of this season, as well as the first 4 weeks of last season, where the Saints were inarguably a more explosive team. Certainly through the first 2 weeks, but even in their week 3 and week 4 games, they still found some deep shots here and there that ended up making them look like they were one of the best teams in the NFL. Offensive coordinator at the time, Clint Kubiak, was getting head coach conversation through just 2 weeks of the season. All of it proved to be premature as this team went on a 7-game losing streak, fired its head coach, and then eventually would flip its entire coaching staff over the course of the offseason, change its quarterback, and so on and so forth. But they were inarguably a more explosive team through the first 4 weeks of the 2024 season than they were in the 2025 season. But would you believe me if I told you that the Saints have thrown more 20-yard plus passes this season than they did last season within the first 4 games of the season? It's the truth. Only by one, the Saints have actually thrown 15 passes, according to our friends over at True Media, of 20-plus air yards. That's yards from the line of scrimmage. While the Saints last year, using the same metrics, the same, also True Media, all that, through 14. Now, here's the difference. The Saints this season have completed just 3 of those passes for and I mean this when I say it, measly 80 passing yards. I'm saying measly because the number is small, not as an insult to anybody, but that's not what you expect when you are tied for 11th in the NFL in 20-plus yard passes. That is also true of the New Orleans Saints this season. Now, last year, the Saints threw 14 through the first 4 games, 1 less than they've thrown so far this year. The difference is, instead of completing 3, they completed 5 through the first 4 games. 5 passes or 5 completions for 224 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, also had 2 interceptions. Now, you understand the further you throw a ball downfield, the higher the variance becomes. Yeah, you might walk away with a big explosive touchdown play. You might walk away with a big explosive play, but also you're putting the ball at risk as well. It's a higher variance throw, but you'll take that when you're completing those passes and they're leading to touchdown drives. So for New Orleans, the difference between this year and last year is 2 completions and about 144 yards. So obviously that is a big part of what the gap is. But the bottom line stands that the Saints are taking the shots. They're just not connecting on the shots. Now, in some cases, it can be a ball placement thing. In some cases, it can be a drop pass thing. In other cases, it was simply that you're just trying to get the ball up somewhere and give somebody an opportunity, and it's covered well, all that. The Saints have 0 touchdowns and 0 interceptions on 20-plus yard passes so far this season, but they have a 49.3 passer rating, while the Saints last year had an 83.9 passer rating on such plays. And this is just looking at one quarterback each. This is looking at Spencer Rattler this year, Derek Carr last year. Doesn't take into account anything that my memory doesn't serve me, but anything that perhaps Taysom Hill, that the Saints tried to do early in the season with Taysom Hill, though memory doesn't serve me well when I try to think about that. So this is the margin of difference, is it's a difference of 2 completions, but 2 very big completions. And so there's a big difference between the 20-yard pass that goes 21 yards and the 20-yard plus pass that goes 75 yards, right? And so that's where the explosiveness came from last year's offense. They were finding ways to get the ball downfield for massive plays, not just 2 20-ish yard passes. The Saints' 3 completions of more than 20 yards, and you heard Lance Moore talk about this in yesterday's squad show, or rather Wednesday night squad show. One of them was for 39 yards in that San Francisco 49ers game, but one was for 20 yards and the other was for 21 yards. That's not going to be enough when it comes to trying to be an explosive team. On the other hand, when you look at the 5 completions that the Saints had of 20 or more yards last year on passes that traveled through the air that much, there was a lot more going on those completions than just barely 20-yard completions. You had 1 for 27, 1 for 29, but then you also had 1 for 39, 1 for 59, and 1 for 70. And in a couple of those, you're talking about touchdown passes on top of it. The 1 for 59 yards and the 1 for 70 yards, which happens in weeks 1 and 2. The Saints had no completions of 20-plus yards last year in week 4, but they had 2 up against the Philadelphia Eagles, 27 and 29. They had 2 in that incredible Dallas Cowboys game, and they had 1 up against the Carolina Panthers. And so this was still pretty well spread out. This wasn't just the first 2 games where the Saints were really like on top of the NFL world for a little while. This spreads out even going into week 3 and then attempts into week 4 as well. So that's all that you need to see from this New Orleans Saints team, right? Easier said than done, of course. But the margin of difference between how explosive the Saints were last year versus how explosive they are this year comes down to 2 receptions, basically, and more yardage on some of those receptions as well. But as we highlighted, even last year, there were some of those that were still in the 20-yard range. So if the Saints want to get a win here up against the New York Giants, they got to find those explosive plays. Explosive plays lead to points. Even if the play itself doesn't put points on the board, you're at a much higher rate of putting points on the board if you do complete some of those explosive plays. And that's just in the passing game. The Saints also have a long run of only 18 yards. Finding ways to generate more explosiveness in the run game can be just as beneficial, and that will be key up against the New York Giants. Coming up next, the New York Giants defensive line is sure to give the New Orleans Saints some fits. We got that coming up for you next as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints brought to you by friends over at Square. Your favorite neighborhood spots run on Square. Whether you're thinking about that great sports bar that you love to go and watch Saints games at, maybe it's that local coffee shop right around the corner that knows your favorite order by heart, or that great restaurant that's been rooted in the community for years. These businesses are what bring people together. And when neighborhood businesses thrive, the neighborhood does too. That's why Square works so hard to support those local businesses. I kind of stay in sort of the 7th Ward Tremay area. There's a great spot over off of the Greenway called Flower Moon Bagels where I go pretty often. Great stuff there when it comes to people that I know, people that I see there, all that. Love Flower Moon. And it's part of what Square does. Square is a proud partner of more than 4 million neighborhood businesses just like them all around the world. So you can go to square.com/go/LockedOnNFL to learn more. But before you do, go and support your favorite neighborhood spot. You'll be happy that you did. Square, see you in the neighborhood. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's moving the game forward for those who believe that it's more than just playing the game, but redefining it. When we take a look at folks that helped to move the game forward for the New Orleans Saints, I think it's pretty obvious. We got to go with running backs Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller here coming out of that fantastic Buffalo Bills game, where they gained 135 of the Saints' 189 rushing yards. And the Saints rushers as a whole, which includes quarterback Spencer Rattler as well, rushed for over 160 yards after contact. They literally helped move the game forward, because if the New Orleans Saints want to move their season forward and move their rebuild forward, doing so on the ground is going to be the way that they get it done, at least for this 2025 season. And so seeing some great success from the Saints up against the Bills on the ground helps to move the game forward. So when you follow what it is that moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to every Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, family, the New Orleans Saints offensive line is sure to have its hands full with a very talented New York Giants defensive front. The New York Giants might not necessarily be a team that tops the NFL when it comes to pass rush metrics. We're going to focus a lot on pass rush here for this portion of the show. They're just outside the top 10 in terms of sacks, but they only have one fewer sack than the New Orleans Saints. They've got 10, while the Saints have 11. And then pressure rate-wise, they rank right around the middle of the pack in terms of number 15. Now, that metric is much better than where the Saints are, which they hover around 30 to 32 range in the NFL, depending upon whose numbers you're looking at. Everybody kind of charts pressures differently. How close are you to quarterback? How do you impact the quarterback? Like, everybody's got a different criteria there. But in any case, the New York Giants are a better pressure defense than the Saints, but relative to the rest of the NFL, they're kind of middle of the pack. But while they don't necessarily have the production to make them something like top of the NFL or anything, they absolutely have the talent that can get them there. Guys like Brian Burns on the edge, as well as, of course, Abdul Carter, Kayvon Thibodeau as well. Two of those three guys, top 10 NFL draft selections, fairly certain top 5 NFL draft selections. All three of them were top 16 NFL draft selections as well. Then you add in Dexter Lawrence, a three-time Pro Bowler in the middle of that defense. This New Orleans Saints offensive line, which is again dealing with injury still, same old story there, is going to have its handful going up against this defensive line of the New York Giants. And so how do they help themselves here while they're dealing with some injuries? Well, first thing to notice is that the Saints will not have Cesar Ruiz at right guard. More than likely, that will mean Torricelli Simpkins stepping into that right guard role. A lot of people look at that as maybe even a net positive. Some folks are very down on Cesar Ruiz, even though the pressure numbers and the sack numbers actually tick up when he's off the field. Some of the egregious plays kind of seem to go away when he's not on the field. So I get the share there. But then when it comes to Torricelli Simpkins, he struggled big time up against the Seattle Seahawks, but played very well up against the Buffalo Bills. He actually had the second lowest pressure rate allowed amongst all rookie offensive linemen, according to 33rd team, with just 4.2% in week 4. And the only player that was better than him, only one, is somebody that the Saints will meet next week, but is familiar to Louisiana sports fans, and that was Will Campbell, former LSU Tiger, now New England Patriot, who allowed a whopping 0.0% pressure rate in his last game for the Patriots. And so looking at that and taking that into consideration, there's obviously some opportunity there for you to still get some very, very good play from a player that has been very impressive all the way back from training camp, especially in the preseason, while starting or having to play some games at center and starting some games at center due to the injury there to Will Clapp early on in the preseason, and then seeing a really good performance from him at right guard last week. Now, Dylan Radins is a guy that is primed to step right into a right guard or left guard role if open, but he's dealing with a toe injury right now. So Simpkins, the door is wide open for him. He'll be one of 3 rookies that are going to get another start here in the week 5 matchup. We'll go over those 3 names here in just a sec. But Torricelli Simpkins, obviously number 68 at right guard, going to be a big one to watch. The other thing to watch here is Trevor Penning. Trevor Penning finished the game up against the Buffalo Bills, but did get rolled up on at one point. He was wearing a brace in the locker room. We asked him about it after the game. He said, "Don't worry about it. It's fine." But then he was not on the field for practice on Wednesday. The good news, though, he was on the field. My apologies. He was not participating in drills on the field during the open portion of practice on Wednesday. Let me make sure I'm accurate about that. On Thursday, that changed. He was active. He was out there. He was in uniform, all that good stuff. So we'll see what happens later on today when the Saints get back for their final practice on Friday. if he's out there and participating and is even questionable going into Sunday's game, now dealing with an ankle injury as opposed to the toe injury that he had suffered in the second week of the preseason, that would be great news for New Orleans, even if questionable, because it gives you some chance to at least have 4 of your 5 starting offensive linemen out there and a very young, promising guy to step in at Torricelli Simpkins. If Penning is also not able to go, I would expect a guy like Awesome Richards or Xavier Truss to step in at left guard while Simpkins stays at right guard, but we'll see how things progress there. But those guys are going to have their hands full with Dexter Lawrence in the middle and guys like Kelvin Banks Jr. and Taliesin Fuanga, who have allowed a total of 29 pressures between the two of them, according to Pro Football Focus so far this season. The both of them are going to have their hands full with pass rushers like Abdul Carter, Brian Burns, and Kayvon Thibodeau. So that's going to be a very, very big part of this game in terms of keeping Spencer Rattler clean. But beyond them, the responsibility will also be shouldered, the load will also be shouldered by the Saints rushing attack. If the Saints are able to be as successful against the number 29 rushing defense of the New York Giants as they were up against the number 32 rushing defense of the Buffalo Bills, it will force that defensive line to play a little bit more honestly and then open up some more opportunities maybe for those downfield passing attempts to finally come to fruition for New Orleans. So that will be a big part of what we're going to be watching there too. And of course, if the Saints can put together some explosive plays in the run game, that only helps to further their case as well and helps to make the game a little bit easier on Spencer Rattler and the Saints passing game. And I think that the Saints passing attack could come to life in this matchup. The Saints, it feels like from a talent perspective, have a more talented pass catching group than the New York Giants have a secondary, especially if Tyler Newman is at all hindered in any way. He missed last week's game up against the Los Angeles Chargers. If he's either hindered, although, he was back at practice limited on Thursday, or if he's out, that certainly gives the New Orleans Saints another opportunity there. I mentioned that Simpkins would be one of 3 rookies to be starting in this game. That, of course, leaves out Kai Kroger. So I should say 4 rookies to be starting in this game. But a guy like Torricelli Simpkins obviously is going to be big to watch. Jonas Sanker getting his next start, and he had an awesome game up against the Buffalo Bills last week. And another guy that looks in line to start now and to get his first career start will be rookie cornerback Quincy Riley. That's going to be a big, big matchup to watch. Now, thankfully, as a rookie, he's not going to have to match up against Malik Neighbors, but still some talented wide receivers for the New York Giants. Guys like Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, a veteran that knows how to take advantage of some opportunities. Wan'Dale Robinson, of course, taking some snaps out of the slot. He'll mostly be lined up, I imagine, up against Alante Taylor. But Quincy Riley on the outside opposite Kool-Aid McKinstry in those nickel snaps, going to be a big piece of this to watch. He's a ball hawk. Can he go and get the ball back for this New Orleans Saints offense and help to steal some possessions? And can Jonas Sanker continue to build on his performance that he showed up against the Buffalo Bills? That will be, both of those guys will be big parts of this game. Not just from the passing defense, though, also them stopping Cam Scatterbo as well as Jackson Dart in the run game is going to be pivotal. This game is pivotal, not just for the New Orleans Saints, but for second-year quarterback Spencer Rattler as well. Let's discuss why and how things can go as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I'm Cody Rourke from Locked On Broncos, and this episode is brought to you by Peloton. Peloton is shaping the future of fitness with the brand new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. This is Peloton's most advanced equipment yet, giving you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or you're cross-training with your favorite instructors like Alex Toussaint. It's training reimagined to make your workout more personal. Peloton is built for breakthroughs with features that help you plan, stay motivated, and hit peak performance. You can let yourself run, lift, flex, and go while Peloton handles all the rest. Plus, Peloton IQ provides real-time strength coaching, tracking your progress and suggesting weights that challenge you so you can get stronger. Plus, the new movement tracking camera, it counts your reps and corrects your form in real time, making sure every rep is safer and smarter. So let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Let's Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. This is a very important game for the New Orleans Saints, but it is a pivotal game for young quarterback Spencer Rattler. We appreciate you very much for being here with us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow. Show your support for the show. We're here every single Monday through Friday for you, giving you the latest on your New Orleans Saints. And don't forget to catch us every Monday through Friday as well over at the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network at 10 a.m. each of those weekdays. This is a really important game for New Orleans Saints quarterback Spencer Rattler, but I want to be very clear about my intent in discussion around this. It's one of the reasons why I saved it to the end of the show so that we don't get like the reactionary responses of a title or something like that, and that instead, like, I'm saving this for you who made it all the way through the show and wanted to have this conversation with you. So for Spencer Rattler, let me be clear about what I'm not saying before I get to what it is that I am saying so that nothing gets misconstrued here. What I'm not going to be saying is that Spencer Rattler is a bad quarterback. What I'm not going to be saying is that Spencer Rattler lacks the ability to improve. What I'm not going to be saying is that Spencer Rattler is going to lose his job after this week. What I am saying is that this is a perfect opportunity for him to show more growth and more development. The fact of the matter is that Spencer Rattler is a better quarterback this year than he was last year. The fact of the matter is that in many cases, if you look back at that San Francisco 49ers game and really kind of through the Buffalo Bills game as well, he has shown some improvements just during this season as well. Spencer Rattler has not been the reason that the New Orleans Saints have lost games, but in all fairness, he's not been the reason that they've won games either. And that becomes a part of the journey for any rookie quarterback, any young quarterback in the NFL. You go from becoming or being the player that can play an NFL game, which in and of itself is an incredible achievement. I could never do it. To becoming the guy that a team can win with, to becoming the guy that a team wins because of, and then only after that do you even begin to get into the conversation of whether or not you can be a franchise quarterback in the NFL. Now, let me be clear again with what I'm not saying. I am not saying that Spencer Rattler is or isn't any one of those, and in any case, if he was, it is a part of a journey of development. You start at one and you show progress towards the other. And sometimes you get off to a quick start in one of those conversations. We've seen that happen, Patrick Mahomes, but then we've also seen the other side of that happen with other players like Josh Rosen, right? Who showed that he couldn't even be a player that played in the NFL. But then we see the guys like Jordan Love, who can maybe be the guy that you win because of, but is still only on the precipice of the conversation around being a franchise quarterback, so on and so forth. So for Spencer Rattler, he is solidly in one place, beginning to develop into the other place. I asked Spencer Rattler a question the other day, and I really enjoyed his answer. This was from Wednesday, because a lot of the talking points around Spencer Rattler so far this season have been an inability to make some of the connections necessary on some of the in-breaking routes. Now, some of those connections were misses in terms of ball placement. Others were drops, things like that. Some were a combination of both. I think the one that comes to most people's mind was the missed connection between he and Chris Olave in the end zone on the in-breaking route, and what should have been a touchdown. Just call it what it is. And then you go back to the preseason, there was one there. You go to the week 3 game up against the Seattle Seahawks, another misconnection from the opposite side of the field between Olave and Spencer Rattler, a throw placed behind Chris Olave that ended up being broken up through the defender into the play. And then another one was the ball placement on the in-breaking route that could have given the Saints their first lead of the season up against the Buffalo Bills in the second half of that game on that almost incredible catch by Brandin Cooks. So Brandin Cooks' credit in all of that too. So those are the throws that obviously become a part of the question. Now, again, I'll have to be clear about what it is that I'm not saying so that nothing becomes misconstrued. But what I'm not saying is that Spencer Rattler will always lack the ability to make those throws. What I'm saying is that it has been a trend so far, and this game up against the New York Giants should present him an opportunity to show that he can present the growth that he so, I thought, forcefully described that he has confidence in when I asked him about it on Wednesday. Now, when I say forceful, I don't mean that he was rude about it. He wasn't at all, and he wasn't upset when I asked the question at all, but I loved the way that he answered it because he answered it with a level of command and belief in himself and his team. He said immediately, I put that one on me. I put that on me, the idea of these in-breaking routes. He said, just got to keep working on timing, got to keep working on footwork, chemistry with the guys. They know that they're going to go for it. He pointed out that sometimes you spend all week practicing that from 10 yards away, and then in the game, you run it from 17 yards away. But in any case, still have to find a way to make it work. And then he went into exactly what it takes to make that throw work, and then expressed confidence that he and his guys will be able to do that. Got to slow down your feet. Don't have to throw it as hard as you can. Just put it in a spot and let the players go out there and make a play. And then he ended with this. But again, game of inches, you want those, you need those, you can't miss those anymore, won't miss them, as in to say, won't miss them anymore. I thought that that was a good statement from Spencer Rattler, who effectively took the blame for those throws, but then expressed he knows how to fix it, he knows how to improve, and that he will show that improvement. That is why I say that this game is a pivotal game for Spencer Rattler, because he is trying to battle the business. It's not always about the performance when it comes to quarterbacks when there's another quarterback waiting in the wings. Sometimes it's about the business. And so he has to convince the business to allow him effectively, or convince the business to extend his reign as the starting quarterback for this team while he's trying to prove that growth, right? And growth inevitably comes with more reps, more opportunities, all those other things. But at the same time, this is a quarterback that is going to continue to get pinpointed because he does not have a win yet in the NFL, which means that he has not entered the conversation yet of a quarterback that the team can win with or a quarterback that the team wins because of. He's not in that conversation yet. And this game up against the New York Giants presents a prime opportunity for him to be able to navigate the pressure of a really good defensive line, but exploit the weaknesses of a secondary with a team that's ready to go out there and show that they can take steps forward along with their quarterback. So I am not saying anything finite or conclusive about Spencer Rattler because that would be premature, but what I can say is that this game, massively important for him. Make sure you're keeping it locked here on Locked On Saints so you get the Locked On Saints squad show after the game, which I'm predicting will be a win for the New Orleans Saints. Let me know what you think. We appreciate you very much as always, making us a party today, part of your routine for saying yes to me and the show. If you see me, please say hi. If you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing, let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.